When lightning tore across the Phoenix sky, a homeless boy threw himself into the fire to save a biker's daughter. The crowd thought they witnessed a miracle, until the Hell's Angels showed up by the hundreds. Engines thundered, secrets surfaced, and one name from the past sent chills through every man in leather. By sunrise, no one was sure who was the hero and who set the trap. Welcome to the Echo Tales family. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to hit you deeper than you expect. And to everyone who's been riding with this channel from day one, may God keep blessing you and your household. Before we roll into this, let's take a moment and pray together. Heavenly Father, I lift up every single person watching right now. Cover them and their families with your protection, bring healing where there's pain, open doors where there's lack, and fill their hearts with a peace only you can give. Let your presence be real in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, Amen. Now, what you're about to experience is the kind of story that tests the soul. A homeless boy who chooses to do what's right, even when it means putting his own life on the line, all for a little girl whose life hangs by a thread when no one else is brave enough to step in. The thunder rolled low and heavy across the Arizona desert, the kind that makes the air buzz before the rain hits. Downtown Phoenix glowed like fire under the night sky. Thousands of bikes lined the streets, chrome glinting beneath flashes of lightning. It was the Thunder Ride Festival, where roaring engines and spilled whiskey could drown out even the heavens. Engines growled under the neon lights of the Iron Stallion bar. The smell of oil, cigarettes, and barbecue filled every breath. Rain sprinkled over leather jackets and polished tanks, hissing softly on hot chrome. And then there was one boy, who didn't belong there at all. A skinny kid in a torn hoodie, sweeping trash behind the food stalls, hoping for a few leftover fries. 17, hungry, and invisible. His name: Eli Carter. Nobody looked at him twice as he pushed his broom through puddles reflecting red and blue lights. But if anyone had looked close enough, they might have noticed something strange, an old biker's patch, half-burned, stitched into his backpack. A mark from another life he didn't talk about. And before the night changes everything, make sure to like this video, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because what happens next, no one in Phoenix will ever forget. Rain began to fall harder, soft at first, then in sheets that soaked through clothes and glittered under the stage lights. Music blasted from every direction, guitars screaming, engines revving in reply. At the center of it all, standing near the main stage, was a girl named Lily Jensen. 16, bright-haired and full of energy, her hoodie drawn tight around her as she filmed the crowd for her father, Reaper Jensen. Reaper wasn't just any biker. He was the kind of man whose silence carried weight. President of the local Hells Angels chapter, the one whose word could start or end a war. He was rough, scarred, built like a storm cloud. But tonight, even Reaper let a faint smile slip as he watched his daughter laugh under the lights. He hadn't smiled like that in years. Not since the betrayal. Not since the man named Ryder Carter vanished into the dark. Up on the tower, a single coil of live wire sparked dangerously in the wind. Nobody saw it, but the storm did. Lightning flashed, rattling the stage. Eli was about to leave when he spotted the shimmer of blue light snapping above Lily's head. The tower swayed, one cable dancing loose, sizzling and spitting sparks into the puddles below. The crowd kept cheering, unaware that in seconds, one wrong step would turn celebration into tragedy. The sound hit like a gunshot, metal snapping, lights exploding, screams splintering through the music. The cable swung down, crackling with deadly voltage. People scattered, knocking over tables, slipping in beer and rain. Lily stumbled backward, her hand brushing water as the wire coiled toward her. Eli didn't think. He ran. His shoes slapped through puddles as the current flashed blue-white around him. The heat was instant, fierce, like the sky reached down to strike. He hit Lily hard, shoving her out of the way, and the wire caught him in mid-motion. White light. Blinding. For one frozen heartbeat, the world stopped moving. Then his body hit the ground, twitching before going completely still. Lily screamed his name, though she didn't even know it yet. Bikers came rushing from every direction, Reaper at the front, throwing off his jacket to pull the wire clear. Rain poured harder, washing streaks of smoke off Eli's arms. His face was pale, his chest unmoving. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Reaper knelt beside him, rain dripping from his beard. The man who led hundreds of outlaws suddenly looked small, helpless. He pressed his palm to the boy's chest, muttering something like a prayer. Lily held her breath, tears mixing with rain. Then one of the bikers leaned closer, squinting at the unconscious kid's face. His voice dropped low. "Reaper. I know that look. This boy, he's Ryder Carter's son." Reaper's head snapped up. For a second, the noise around him disappeared. The name hit like an echo from a grave. Ryder Carter. The man who'd betrayed them to the feds, the man who vanished and left blood on the asphalt. The name that no one was supposed to speak again. Now his son was lying on the ground after saving Reaper's daughter's life. Sirens wailed through the storm. Paramedics pushed through the crowd and lifted Eli onto a stretcher. Burnt fabric clung to his skin. His eyes were closed, chest barely rising. Lily reached out as they carried him away. "He saved me. He didn't even know me." Reaper watched the ambulance drive into the rain, the red lights reflecting off his wet glasses. He didn't say a word. Not to Lily. Not to anyone. Just stood there, jaw clenched, remembering the night Ryder disappeared. Remembering the brother who broke his oath, and wondering what curse had just walked back into his life. Hours later, at Phoenix General Hospital, the storm still hadn't let go. Rain hammered against the glass as doctors fought to stabilize the boy. Lily sat outside the ICU, wrapped in a blanket, still trembling. Reaper stood at the window, not looking at her, just watching the rain drip down the glass. "He'll pull through," he said softly. "Boy's tougher than he looks." Lily turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. Do you think you know him?" Reaper hesitated, the memory surfacing again, the same jawline, same eyes as Ryder. He didn't answer her. Some truths were heavier than bullets. A nurse rushed out, her scrub streaked with sweat. "He's alive, for now. Severe burns, cardiac trauma, were keeping him under observation." Relief washed over Lily's face, but Reaper didn't move. His mind was somewhere else. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something the medics had found inside the boy's backpack. Charred, but still recognizable, a metal pendant shaped like an angel's skull. He'd seen it before. Long ago. Around Ryder's neck. Thunder cracked again, shaking the building windows. Reaper closed his fist around the pendant. No one says a word about this, he muttered. You hear me? His lieutenant nodded and melted back into the shadows. Inside the ICU, Eli lay between machines and wires. The room flickered with sterile light. His palms twitched, bandages faintly glowing with reflected lightning. On his wrist, at first hidden under the charred skin, an old tattoo shimmered through. The same Reaper crest every Hell's Angel wore before the betrayal. Outside the hospital, headlights began to appear, first 10, then 30, then hundreds more. Engines rumbled through the night like thunder moving closer. Every one of them carried the emblem of the angels on their jackets. Word had spread. Over 500 riders converging on Phoenix General, engines idling like a single heartbeat beneath the rain. From the waiting room window, Lily pressed her hand to the glass, whispering, "Dad, what are they doing here?" Reaper stared at the approaching storm of lights. "They're not here for trouble," he said, voice low and steady. "They're here for the truth." Outside, engines thundered. Inside, the monitors next to Eli beeped in rhythm with the rain. His eyelids fluttered, just once, and his lips parted, barely moving. Reaper leaned closer, tense. And in a cracked, ghost of a whisper, a single sentence broke through the hum of machines. "Tell my father, it wasn't his fault." Every monitor light blinked red. The power flickered out. Engines outside roared in unison. Darkness swallowed the room. Rain still clung to the city by the time morning tried to push through the hospital windows, turning Phoenix into a blur of gray and faded neon. The storm had moved on, but it left its fingerprints everywhere. In the flooded gutters outside, in the lingering smell of wet asphalt, and in the echo of sirens that still haunted the air. Inside Phoenix General, the bright fluorescent lights felt wrong, too clean for a night that had tasted like smoke, electricity, and fear. Lily sat hunched in a plastic chair outside Eli's room, fingers wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Her hoodie was still damp, her hair tangled, and her eyes swollen from crying, but she refused to move. Through the narrow window in the ICU door, she could see him, Eli, lying pale and motionless beneath a mess of tubes and wires. Machines breathed for him. Machines spoke for him. The boy who had leapt into lightning now looked as fragile as burnt paper. Behind her, heavy boots creaked along the linoleum. The air tightened without a word being spoken. Lily didn't have to turn to know her father was there. Reaper leaned against the wall opposite the door, arms crossed, tattoos half hidden beneath the rolled sleeves of a plain black shirt. Without the roar of his bike or the armor of his cut, he looked different, older, heavier, as if the night had dropped years on his shoulders. For a long moment, they both stared through the glass at the same broken boy. The silence between them felt like it could crack. If stories like this grip you, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next twist. Because what happened in that storm was only the opening shot, and the past wasn't done with any of them yet. Down in the parking lot, engines rumbled in low unison. Word had spread fast, faster than the rain. Hell's Angels from every corner of the state had rolled in before dawn. Bikers lined the lot in tight rows, chrome glinting under the thinning clouds, patches flashing red and white. Nurses peeked nervously through blinds. Security guards kept their distance. 500 riders sat waiting, not drinking, not laughing. Just, watching the doors. Lily finally looked up at her father. They all came here, for him. Reaper's eyes stayed locked on the window. They came because they heard a kid jumped into live wires for my daughter at one of our runs, he said quietly. And because his last name isn't one they can ignore. Lily frowned. Carter. You said that like it's supposed to mean something. Reaper's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. His silence said more than words ever could. The ICU door opened, and a doctor stepped out, tugging his mask down. Exhaustion hung under his eyes. Lily shot to her feet, the coffee cup slipping from her fingers and thudding to the floor, cold liquid splashing across her shoes. Is he okay? She asked, voice thin with fear. For now, the doctor replied. He's stabilized. Severe burns, cardiac trauma. He shouldn't be alive, but somehow he is. He glanced at Reaper, clearly aware of who he was, clearly too smart to say anything about it. He's not out of danger. But you can go in for a few minutes. One at a time. Lily nodded quickly, but Reaper spoke before she could move. She goes in first, he said. I'll wait. The doctor nodded and walked away, shoes squeaking softly down the hall. Lily glanced up at her father. You're not coming. Reaper kept his gaze cold, steady. I will. Later. There are some things I gotta be sure of before I look that kid in the eye. She didn't understand, but there wasn't time to argue. She pushed the door open and slipped into the ICU. Inside, the air was colder, filled with the soft hiss of oxygen and the steady beeping of monitors. Eli looked even smaller up close, lost beneath white sheets and taped wires. His skin was a patchwork of bruises and burns, the kind of damage no teenager should wear. Lily crept closer, each step echoing on tile. Hey, she whispered, pulling the chair closer to the bed. It's me. The girl you nearly died for. His eyes remained closed. The machines answered in his place. She sat down slowly, hands trembling in her lap. You don't know me, but I owe you my life, she said. You didn't even hesitate. You just ran. Everyone else jumped away. You went toward it. Her voice cracked, and she bit her lip hard. I don't know where you came from, Eli Carter, she murmured, but you didn't fall out of the sky for no reason. Outside, Reaper turned away from the window and headed down the hallway with a purpose that made nurses quickly step aside. He needed answers, answers he suspected would hurt more than any wound he'd taken in a bar fight. In his pocket, his fingers closed around a charred metal pendant, a small angel skull, burned but still recognizable. The same pendant Ryder Carter used to wear. The man who had once been his brother. The man who had sold him and his club out. The man who was supposed to be dead. Another set of boots approached from the other end of the hall. Tank, Reaper's trusted lieutenant, slowed beside him. Parking lot's full, Tank said. Boys are restless. They want to know what we're doing about the kid. Reaper kept walking. We're not doing anything to him. Not yet. Some of the older heads don't like that, Tank warned. They remember that name. Carter. They bleed when they hear it. My daughter would be a chalk outline if he hadn't moved, Reaper snapped. Anyone forgets that, they answer to me. Tank nodded but didn't look convinced. Old scars ran deep in men like them. They stopped near a quiet corner of the floor, where no nurses lingered. Tank lowered his voice. You really think he's Ryder's boy? Reaper stared at the wall for a moment, then spoke low. Same eyes. Same jaw. Same damn pendant in his bag. That kid is Ryder Carter's son. No doubt in my mind. And if he is? Tank asked. What does that make him? Threat? Debt? Both? Reaper didn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know. Back in Eli's room, something shifted. His fingers twitched. Lily blinked, leaning forward, heart pounding. Eli, she whispered. Can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered, weak but real. Slowly, they opened, just enough for her to see his eyes. Glassy, unfocused, trying to find something to hold on to in the blur of white and light. Hey, she said, voice shaking. You're okay. You're safe. You're in the hospital. He tried to speak. Nothing came out at first. His throat worked, muscles fighting the weight of tubes and pain. Don't try too hard, she murmured. Just breathe. His gaze locked onto her. For a second, something like recognition flickered there, not of her, but of the danger pressing in around them. Fear sharpened his expression. Run, he rasped. Lily froze. What? His hand jerked, fingers digging weakly into the blanket. Run, he repeated, voice torn and harsh. They'll come. The hairs on the back of her neck rose. Who? Who's coming? His eyes rolled toward the door, toward the small slit of glass that looked out into the hall. His breathing hitched, and the monitor's beep sped up. In that exact moment, the hallway lights outside flickered once, twice, then dimmed. Not completely, but enough to make shadows stretch longer than they should. Lily's pulse hammered. She glanced at the door, then back at Eli. It's just the power, she whispered, more to herself than to him. Hospitals do this all the time. But Eli's fear didn't ease. If anything, it grew. He forced more words out between labored breaths. They tried, last night. Power line, not accident. Her heart skipped. You're saying someone did that on purpose? His eyes squeezed shut in pain, then opened again, glassy and desperate. Didn't want her, he managed. Wanted me. Cold spread through her chest. The idea that the electrocution wasn't just an accident but an attempt to kill him drilled into her mind like ice. Eli, that doesn't make sense, she whispered. You're just. The door handle moved. Barely. Just a soft twitch, as if someone outside had rested their hand there without pushing down yet. Lily went still. Her chair suddenly felt a mile from the exit. Eli's breathing hitched. Don't let them in. His voice was barely air now, each word costing him. She swallowed hard, standing up slowly. Dad, she called, hoping Reaper was still close enough to hear. No answer. The hum of machines and footsteps out in the hallway blurred together, distant and muffled. The handle twitched again, a little firmer this time. Someone was out there. Someone who hadn't knocked. Someone who didn't speak. Lily stepped between the door and Eli's bed, her body blocking the direct line of sight. Her hands trembled, but she held her ground. On the other side of the door, the shadow of a figure slid across the small window, pausing for a heartbeat. Then, with sudden purpose, the handle began to turn. The hospital lights flickered, and went out. Only the glow of Eli's monitor remained, casting the room in eerie green. In that thin, sickly light, Lily watched the door begin to open. And whatever waited in the hallway finally stepped inside. Darkness crashed back over the room like a wave, thick and suffocating. The hum of the hospital dropped to a low, uneasy murmur. Only the pale glow of Eli's monitor cut through the black, painting the bed, the wires, and Lily's face in ghostly green. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to move, but her feet refused. Eli's hand clamped around her wrist again, his grip weak but urgent. His eyes locked on the door, wide and unblinking. He knew, whoever was coming wasn't a nurse. The door eased open with a soft, slow push, as if the person on the other side wanted to savor the silence. A tall figure slipped into the room, shutting the door behind them with a soft click that sounded far too final. The hood of a dark sweatshirt cast their face in shadow. In this moment, everything was coiled tight: fear, secrets, unfinished business. If you want to see how deep this story goes, like and subscribe before the next blow lands, because the next move in this room could change everything for Eli, for Lily, and for every biker waiting outside. Lily swallowed hard, forcing words past the knot in her throat. "This is a restricted room," she said, voice shaking but sharp. "You're not supposed to be in here." The figure stepped closer, boots silent on the tile. As they passed through the faint cone of light from the monitor, Lily caught a glimpse of stubble along a hard jaw, a ragged scar cutting down from the corner of his mouth to his neck. He didn't look like hospital staff. He looked like trouble that had already seen too much of the world. He didn't answer her. His gaze slid to Eli instead, taking in the wires, the burns, the fragile rise and fall of his chest. "You weren't supposed to make it through that," the man said finally, voice low and rough, each word scraped against old grudges. "You were supposed to be a closed chapter, kid." Lily's fear burned into anger. She stepped slightly in front of Eli's bed, as if her small frame could mean anything against this stranger. "Get away from him," she snapped. "Right now. You don't talk to him. You don't touch him. You don't." He cut his eyes to her, dark and uninterested. "Relax, princess. If I wanted him gone, I wouldn't be standing here talking." Eli forced his voice through cracked lips. "Mason," he rasped. Lily's stomach dropped at the name. She'd heard her father spit that name like poison before. A ghost from old stories. A reminder of things Reaper never finished explaining. "So you do remember me," the man said, a humorless smile tugging at his ruined mouth. "Ryder did teach you something after all." Lily's mind spun. "Who are you?" she demanded. "How do you know him? How do you know his father?" Mason took another step forward, ignoring her completely. His hand moved toward one of the lines running into Eli's arm, fingers hovering over it. Not pulling yet, just testing how far he could push. Lily reacted on instinct. She shoved him hard in the chest. He barely budged, but the surprise made him drop his hand. "I said get away from him," she shouted. "My dad is downstairs with 500 Hell's Angels. You really want to do this here?" Mason's eyes glinted. "Your dad," he said softly, "is why all of this is finally falling apart." Before Lily could snap back, the door burst open again. Emergency lights flickered to life in the hallway, casting harsh red flashes into the room. Reaper filled the doorway like a storm cloud, 2 of his men at his back, leather vests and patches glaring under the emergency glow. "Step away from my daughter," Reaper said, voice so calm it was more terrifying than a shout. Mason's posture changed, shoulders squaring, chin lifting. "Always were dramatic, Reaper," he drawled. "You still know how to make an entrance." Reaper's eyes narrowed. "Didn't expect to see your face again, Mason. Thought you'd be rotting under someone's unmarked dirt by now." "Plenty tried," Mason replied. "You'd know that if you hadn't spent the last decade pretending the past doesn't exist." Reaper stepped into the room, his men fanning slightly to block the exit. "You walk into a hospital room where my kid and a half-dead boy are lying, and you think we're here to talk about my memory?" Mason smirked, but there was no joy in it. "No. I'm here because your past didn't stay buried. Ryder Carter's alive. And the people he made deals with are finally cashing in." Lily turned to her father, shock painted across her face. "Ryder, that's Eli's father, right? You told me he was dead," Reaper finished, eyes never leaving Mason. "That's what we were told." Mason shook his head slowly. "That's what you wanted to believe. But Ryder didn't die. He just disappeared into the cracks with a target painted on his back. And on his son's." Lily glanced at Eli. His eyes were open, glassy with pain and resentment. He confirmed it with a small nod. "He's alive," Eli murmured. "Didn't see him much. Just heard his name, in whispers." Reaper's fists balled at his sides. Old wounds reopened all at once. "You said the electrocution wasn't an accident," he growled. "Talk." Mason's gaze hardened. "That power line didn't fall on its own. Someone tampered with the rig earlier in the day. The rain just gave them cover. That shock. That was meant to finish the last loose end of a deal gone bad." "Eli?" Lily whispered. "It was meant for him." "Not the girl," Mason said flatly. "She was just in the way." Rage erupted behind Reaper's eyes, slow and deadly. "Who?" he demanded. "Who set it up?" Mason shook his head. "I don't know which one threw the switch, but I know who wants the Carter line erased. Same people Ryder traded your secrets to. Feds gone dirty. Men who don't like loose ends walking around with their dad's pendant in his face." Tank shifted near the door, knuckles cracking. "This is a lot of story for a man who vanished when everything went to hell." Mason's jaw clenched. "I vanished because I refused to wear a wire or sell out my own. Ryder made a different choice. He flipped. But he didn't flip just for himself. He did it to get protection for the kid lying in that bed." Reaper's voice dropped, dangerous and quiet. "You're saying Ryder sold us out, to save his son?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Mason replied. "But those protections ran dry. Budgets get cut. Cases get buried. Agents get greedy. Now the same people who promised to hide Eli are tying up loose ends so their sins don't crawl out into the light. Lily looked helplessly between the men. So what happens now? They already tried to kill him once. They know he survived. They know we're all here. Mason's eyes flicked to her, then back to Reaper. Now. Now they watch. They wait. They see who rallies around the boy. And then they burn everything down, so there's no one left to tell the story. Reaper stepped closer to Mason, close enough that their noses almost touched. You came here to warn me. Why? Since when do you do favors? Mason's gaze didn't waver. This isn't a favor. This is survival. For you. For me. For every man wearing your patch. If they take out the Carter kid and whoever's protecting him, they erase the last living proof of what really happened the night you thought Ryder betrayed you. Reaper's world tilted for a split second. Proof? Mason nodded toward Eli. Check his bag. Properly this time. There's a hidden pocket in the lining. Ryder left him a gift. Been waiting years for the right moment to surface. Lily's eyes widened. The backpack, it's still here. They brought it up with him. Reaper jerked his chin at one of his men. Get it. The biker stepped out and returned moments later with Eli's battered backpack, scorched at the edges but still intact. Reaper ripped it open, fingers searching the frayed seams until he found a thickened edge and tore it free. A small, plastic-wrapped object fell into his hand, a flash drive, its casing blackened but intact. That's it, Mason said. Years of insurance. Calls. Coordinates. Names. Enough to bury more than one badge. Reaper stared at the drive, the weight of it far heavier than its size. You sat on this. For how long? Until they came for the kid, Mason said. I figured as long as Ryder's son stayed in the shadows, there was a chance we could walk away. But the minute he stepped into your world, this stopped being something we could ignore. Lily reached for her father's arm. Dad, what are you going to do? Reaper closed his fist around the drive. What I should have done a long time ago, he said. I'm going to find Ryder. And I'm going to find out if I've been hating the wrong man all these years. Mason nodded once. He's out past the old airfield off Route 17. Cabin buried in the scrub, no roads on any map. You won't find him by accident. Reaper turned toward the door. Tank, lock this floor down. No one in or out. No uniforms, no suits, nobody, unless Lily says so. Tank nodded. You got it. Lily's chest tightened. You're leaving. Reaper looked back at her, eyes softer for a fleeting heartbeat. I'm going to drag a ghost into the light, he said. And if he's got answers, I'm bringing them home. He walked out with Tank at his side, boots pounding down the hallway. Mason lingered for a moment, watching Eli with an unreadable expression. You didn't ask for any of this, kid, he muttered. But neither did we. He turned and followed Reaper out, leaving Lily alone with the steady beep of machines and the storm of thoughts tearing through her mind. Down in the parking lot, engines roared to life one by one as Reaper swung his leg over his bike. Thunder Ride Festival was over, but a different kind of ride was about to begin, one aimed straight at the heart of a past everyone had tried to bury. Upstairs, Lily sank back into the chair beside Eli. "This is insane," she whispered. "Your dad. My dad. Deals, betrayals, all of it because of things that happened before we were even born." Eli's eyes drifted to the corner of the room, where a small security monitor hung from the wall. It had been blank since the lights flickered. Now it crackled to life. Static cleared slowly, revealing grainy footage from a dark room somewhere else. A bare bulb swung overhead. A man stepped into frame, older, gaunt, with familiar eyes and a familiar pendant hanging from his neck. Lily's breath caught. Eli's heart monitor spiked. The man leaned closer to the camera, voice rough but clear through the speakers. "Reaper," he said. "If you're seeing this, they've found my boy. And they're coming for yours." The screen glitched, then cut to black. The desert night wrapped itself around the old airfield like a secret the city had tried to forget. Cracked concrete stretched into the dark, broken lines swallowed by sand and weeds. The last light of day bled out behind the jagged mountains, leaving only a cold blue haze and the promise of another storm gathering far off on the horizon. The air was still, thick with the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Then, in the distance, a low rumble started. One engine at first. Then another. Then dozens more, swelling into a rolling thunder that vibrated through the bones of the deserted runway. Headlights pierced the dark in a long, burning line as 500 Hell's Angels rode in tight formation, chrome glinting under the thin sliver of moon. At the front was Reaper, jaw set, eyes locked on the lone wooden structure squatting at the far edge of the airfield like a shadow waiting to be confronted. He cut the engine and the others followed, the roar dying down into a restless growl of idling bikes. The only light came from their headlights and the faint glow from a single window in the old cabin ahead. Reaper swung off his bike, boots grinding grit beneath his soles as he walked forward alone, every step a challenge to the ghosts that had led him here. If stories like this have you hooked already, like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because this was where betrayals, secrets, and bloodlines were finally going to collide. Behind him, the angels stayed astride their bikes, engines rumbling like a warning to the dark. No one spoke. They all knew the name that had dragged them out here. Ryder Carter. The man who had once ridden beside Reaper as a brother and then vanished in a storm of sirens and accusations. The man everyone believed had sold them out. The father of the kid lying in a hospital bed, clinging to life. Reaper reached the cabin door and paused, his hand hovering over the handle. For a second, the years fell away, and he saw another night. Two young men laughing under a streetlight, engines hot, the world still open in front of them. Then came the memory of cuffs, of doors slamming, of names shouted like curses. He pushed the images down and forced the door open. Inside, the air was stale, laced with dust and the faint smell of old smoke. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting the small room in narrow circles of light and shadow. At a scarred wooden table sat a man whose name had haunted Reaper's nights for years. Ryder Carter looked smaller than the legend he'd become. His hair had gone gray in streaks, his face hollowed by years of running and hiding. But the eyes, those sharp, restless eyes, were the same. Around his neck, the familiar skull angel pendant hung like an accusation. Ryder didn't stand. He just watched Reaper walk in, the weight of decades in his gaze. "Took you long enough," he said quietly. Reaper's hands flexed at his sides. "You've been alive all this time," he growled. "While men rotted in cells for what you did. While your son slept under bridges. And you say I took too long." Ryder flinched at the mention of Eli. It was quick, but Reaper saw it. There was something human left under all that guilt. "Sit down," Ryder said. "We don't have time for you to be dramatic." Reaper didn't sit. "You sold us out," he said. "You handed our routes, our deals, our names to the feds. They came for us. Some never made it back. Tank still wakes up choking on that night. You turned ghost. And now I find out you had a kid the entire time." Ryder's jaw worked. "I didn't sell you out for me," he said. "I did it so they wouldn't put a bullet in Eli's head." The words hung in the cabin like smoke. Outside, thunder rumbled far off, rolling across the empty airfield. "They had us, Reaper," Ryder went on. "Every move, every shipment, every number. They cornered me. Showed me pictures of Eli. Showed me what happens to kids that get caught in crossfire. They offered me a choice, trade names and routes for witness protection for my boy. Not for me. For him." Reaper stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Then why are men I rode with still buried or locked up?" "Because the deal went sideways," Ryder said, bitter. "Like they always do. They took what they wanted from me, then decided a dead snitch is safer than a live one. I barely slipped the noose. Eli got shuttled through safe houses by people who didn't care if he ate or froze, just as long as he stayed far enough away from you for me to be useful." Reaper's chest rose and fell, slow and heavy. "You could have come to me," he said. "You could have told me the truth before all this." Ryder laughed once, humorless and broken. "You would have believed me. Back then. When the feds were slamming doors and holding up files with your name on them. You would have looked me in the eye and trusted that I did it for your sake, too." Reaper didn't answer. Because they both knew the truth. Ryder's voice dropped. "I saw the footage," he said. "The boy, my boy. Throwing himself into a live wire for your daughter." His knuckles whitened on the edge of the table. "I thought I'd lost him in 100 different ways. But that should have killed him." "It almost did," Reaper said. "They planned it that way." Ryder looked up sharply. "They?" Reaper pulled the flash drive from his pocket and tossed it onto the table. It slid across the rough wood and stopped just in front of Ryder's hands. "Your insurance," Reaper said. "Mason told me. You've been holding on to the truth all this time, waiting to use it. Well, congratulations. You dragged us all into your unfinished war." Ryder stared at the drive, then at Reaper. "You came out here instead of running it straight to the press." Reaper's jaw tightened. "I came out here because before I burned down the men chasing your son, I needed to know if you were worth defending." Silence filled the cabin, thick and suffocating. Outside, the Angels waited, engines idling, headlights pointed at the cabin like a jury ready to deliver its verdict. Ryder pushed to his feet, slower than he once would have. "You want the truth?" he said. "I did betray you. I signed those papers. I gave them names. I let them move on routes we built together. He took a shaky breath. And I've been dying every day since for it. But I did it because they were going to kill Eli. They were going to use him as a message. I chose him over you. Over the club. Over everything. Reaper's fists clenched. You don't get points for admitting it. Ryder nodded. I know. But now they're not just coming for him. They're coming for you. For Lily. For every man outside on those bikes. They want the drive. They want the last witnesses gone. And they won't stop. Reaper studied him for a long moment. The boy he'd once known flickered behind the worn lines of the man in front of him. The stubbornness. The fear. The loyalty twisted into something desperate. Then we don't give them what they want, Reaper said. Ryder's brow furrowed. What are you thinking? Reaper turned toward the door, voice steady. You started this trying to save your son. We finish it protecting both of them. Far off, the sound of engines changed. A new rumble approached from the opposite side of the airfield, separate from the Angels' line. Dark SUVs rolled into view, black against the night, headlights off until they were close enough that no one could pretend they hadn't seen them coming. Ryder's face went pale. They're here. Reaper stepped outside, the cabin door creaking behind him. The Angels straightened, engines revving low as the SUVs fanned out at the far edge of the runway. Doors opened in tight unison. Men stepped out. Dark suits, tactical gear beneath, guns holstered but obvious. Between them, a man in a long coat walked forward, unhurried. His hair was slicked back, his expression smooth and unreadable. The kind of man who smiled into cameras when the news was good and signed papers in shadows when it wasn't. Reaper walked out to meet him halfway, boots crunching on the cracked concrete. Ryder came to stand at his side, shoulders squared. You brought quite an audience, the suited man said, glancing past them to the rows of bikers. Very theatrical. Reaper's stare was ice. You tried to fry a kid in the middle of my run, he said. Seems only fair to let my people watch how this ends. The man's gaze drifted to Ryder. I see rumors of your death were exaggerated, he mused. Witnesses really are hard to keep buried these days. You lost control of this the moment Eli lived, Ryder said, voice low. You should have finished your own mess instead of sending amateurs. The man's smile never reached his eyes. Eli Carter was never supposed to live long enough to know whose names were on those files. Neither was your old friend here. His eyes flicked back to Reaper. But here we are. You have something that doesn't belong to you. Reaper held up the flash drive between two fingers. Every engine behind him revved once, a wall of sound backing the gesture. You mean this? He said. Looks like it belongs to a lot of people now. The man's expression hardened. You think you can threaten federal officers with old data and a small army of criminals? Reaper's lips twitched. I don't threaten with data, he said. I threaten with the fact that 500 witnesses heard you admit exactly what this is. The man's eyes narrowed. The Angels didn't move, but their presence was a force in itself, heavy and undeniable. You're not walking away from this, the man said. Not with that drive. Not with him. He nodded at Ryder. And certainly not with the boy. Funny, Reaper replied. I was about to say the same to you. The air cracked, first with thunder from the storm rolling closer, then with the simultaneous click of guns being drawn. The suited men reached for their weapons. In the same breath, the angels moved, sliding off bikes, forming a wall of leather and steel behind Reaper and Rider. For a few unbearable seconds, everyone stood on the edge of something bad enough to never come back from. Then headlights flared from the far road. New vehicles rolled up, not bikers, not unmarked SUVs. News vans. Camera crews spilling out with lenses up and lights blazing. Someone had made a call. Mason, Lily, someone inside the hospital, it didn't matter now. The suited man saw them and went still. Reaper smiled without warmth. You wanted quiet, he said. I brought company. The agents hesitated. Guns wavered. Cameras zoomed in, red recording lights blinking like tiny warnings. Go ahead, Reaper said softly. Fire into a crowd of unarmed riders on live TV. See how that plays with your badge. The man's jaw clenched. Slowly, he raised a hand. His men lowered their weapons, muscles tight with frustration. This isn't over, he said. You don't know how deep this goes. Reaper stepped closer, lowering his voice so only he and Ryder could hear. It's over for you, he said. Because now the whole world gets to dig. He pressed the flash drive into Ryder's hand. You leak it, he muttered. Everywhere. All at once. Ryder nodded, eyes shining with something like redemption. For Eli, he said. For Eli, Reaper agreed. Back in Phoenix General, storm clouds rolled past the hospital windows as Lily sat at Eli's bedside, watching his chest rise and fall. The TV mounted in the corner played muted footage, helicopters over an airfield, flashes of leather jackets and black SUVs, headlines screaming words like, corruption, cover-up, biker standoff, and, explosive evidence. Lily glanced at the screen, then back at Eli. Looks like our dad's finally stopped running, she whispered. Eli's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, with effort, he opened them. Who won? He rasped. She smiled through tears. We're still here, she said. Feels like that's a win. His gaze drifted to the window. Outside, distant thunder rolled away, leaving the city quieter than it had been in days. Your dad? Eli asked. Lily nodded. He'll be back. He's got some ghosts to bury. And so do you. He swallowed. My dad. She pointed to the TV. A frame froze on Ryder's face for a second before the footage cut away. He's loud for a ghost, she said softly. Eli let out a broken, quiet laugh that twisted into a wince of pain. Figures. She took his hand gently. You're not alone anymore, Eli. Not on the streets. Not under bridges. Not anywhere. He looked at their joined hands, then at the angel's patch draped over the back of the chair, Reaper's cut, left behind like a promise. What does that make me? He whispered. To your dad. To them. Lily squeezed his fingers. It makes you the kid who saved a biker's daughter and forced 500 Hell's Angels to show the world they still have a heart, she said. And it makes you family, whether you like it or not. Outside, engines rumbled faintly as riders began to filter back into the city, the airfield standoff already turning into legend. Some would say a homeless boy changed everything. Others would say lightning finally hit where it was supposed to. Up on the hospital floor, in that small ICU room, the truth was simpler. Two kids caught in the crossfire of their father's sins were finally getting a chance to write a different ending. The storm moved on. The news kept rolling. The engines kept roaring. And somewhere between the fading thunder and the echo of those bikes, a new story started. One where loyalty didn't have to mean silence, where bloodlines didn't have to mean chains, and where a homeless boy who once swept trash in the shadows now had an entire army of angels watching his back.